Hi guys, I'm Maylin Dovan, certified athletic therapist and founder of Rehab-U movement and performance therapy. And I'm going to talk about the benefits of isometric exercises or isometric contractions. Now in this era of functional training and group training, people want to go, and it's a lot about accelerating weight or doing as many reps as possible. And isometrics and mind-muscle connection stuff, that conventional training stuff has become a little bit of a lost art, unfortunately, for certain people. Now, we forget that yes, movement is important, and as I said, in the functional training era, we became very focused on moving instead of muscles, but we took it maybe a little bit too far, and we kind of forgot that muscles are part of movement, right? So being able to identify and contract and recruit a muscle is very important, and we find out in ways that are often not so fun, meaning that people find out that that's important after they've been injured because they didn't have that as a foundation to begin with. Okay, so isometrics can be super useful, and I get that they're not as sexy and they're not as exciting as throwing big weights around, but they're very, very useful to allow you to throw bigger weights around. Okay, so there's a place for everything in a structured approach. There's a place for isometrics in creating a better foundation on which to move, and of course there's a place for isometrics in rehab. So I want to take you through a couple of strategies or interesting types of use of isometrics in training and in rehab, which for me is again kind of the same thing. Because whenever I'm doing rehab with someone, essentially a lot of what I'm doing is manipulating their training because, well, rehab is training, okay? So one of the ways in which I use isometrics, if we focus specifically on rehab, is a lot of the time someone has had, let's say, for example, a shoulder injury, and we're taking them through that process of doing the required manual therapy and addressing the injured tissue, whether it be a rotator cuff issue or a capsular issue or anything like that. And we're going to spend some time getting them their shoulder movement back, so foundational movement of the shoulder and getting their mobility back. And isometrics become important, for example, in creating stability within that mobility. So for example, using an isometric contraction at the end range of motion is important. Okay, so let's take an example of, for a shoulder, for example, I'm going to get Mark to do, we're going to go left shoulder, right? Left shoulder is his bad shoulder. And we're going to do end range external rotation. So what I want him to do is I want him to get to his, or close to his end range, and from there just create external rotation where he's pushing into that end range. So where he feels that resistance, he's going to push and hold for 10 seconds. And then after 10 seconds, he'll release, relax, and maybe he'll be able to get a little bit more range, so he'll be able to move his body forward a little bit more, and then go there again, 10 seconds. And he would do this, for example, for 5 times 10 seconds. Okay, so we see this with shoulders. You could do this with hip rotation as well. Okay, so end range isometrics, just to establish that element of control. Okay, now another area we could use isometrics if we're talking about, so we talked about end range of motion, that to me is a key position. So in lifts, there are also key positions. Where do people tend to fall out of position or compensate because now they really need to overcome a weight? And if they don't have that proper mind-muscle connection because they didn't have it to begin with or because they had an injury, it's always in the key positions of the lift. So if we take the example of a squat, what's one of the key positions of the squat? It's going to be that bottom position where now you need to change the direction. You're going from eccentric to concentric, and now you're needing to overcome that weight from the bottom. Okay, so spending time in a position is really a great way to create awareness of how to drive strength in that position. Okay, so we can use something like overcoming isometrics to work on that key position of the squat. So Marc-Antoine will get under. Now normally with a squat I like to load the bar with more weight than the person can actually lift, because then they can just duck under it. They don't have to pick the bar up and then get it under the pins, but we didn't have enough plates, so so we're doing the awkward way. So he's going to get under the pins, get into his bottom squat position, and from there he's pushing the barbell into the pins for about 6 to 9 seconds-ish, so max isometric contraction. Good? Now, strictly from a rehab perspective, let's say that this bottom position was too difficult. Let's say he's struggling with an issue with his hip, a hip impingement or anything like that, and that bottom range is really the range that's irritable and we're not there yet. We could work a little bit higher than that bottom range on isometrics, and that will allow him to maintain a little bit of that strength in that range that we're limiting initially. So there's a bunch of reasons why using and manipulating isometrics is important as part of a rehab process as well. So we know we can't get them into certain ranges, but if we do isometrics within 10 or so degrees of that range, 10 to 15 degrees, we're still going to get some strength gain in the ranges above and below. So that can be really interesting. So if we're talking about mind-muscle connection, which I mentioned earlier in the capsule is important, isometrics are a good way to connect to a muscle, to learn to identify, recruit, and contract a muscle, because what's better than not moving and focusing on that muscle. So just straight isometrics holding for time, yielding isometrics would be an interesting way. Multi-holds are fun as well as a progression, because you have the isometric hold where you can really focus on the muscle, and then I get you to do a few reps maintaining that focus, and I get you back in the isometric position again, refocus on recruiting that muscle, then do another 3 reps. So I start to introduce reps. So here's an example of a straight arm pull down for the lats. A lot of people have difficulty getting connected with the lats. So what we're gonna get Mark to do is he's gonna do an iso hold at the peak, so he's gonna pull down. He's gonna hold that for 10. 3, 2, 1, then he's going to do 3 reps, 3 full reps. And on the third, he holds again for 10. And then 3 full reps. So he would do this, and keep going, you're going to do 1 more. He would do this 3 times, okay? So hold for 10 seconds, 3 reps, 10 seconds, 3 reps, 10 seconds, 3 reps. So he really gets that connection with the lats, that mind-muscle connection, which will transfer over to if we find that he's not keeping that tightness in his lats when he's doing the deadlift, and it's causing him to have more tension and load in his lower back, that kind of stuff. So all of this lost art of isometrics, it's important for everyone to be more efficient at moving big weights, which is what people enjoy and like to do. It's also super efficient for rehab. So a lot of the simple things that we kind of have gotten away from are really, really important tools for performance and for prehab and for rehab. So just remember that there are lots of benefits and lots of different and fun ways to incorporate isometrics.